cafe memory ကနေပြန်လဲကြိုဆိုပါရစေကျွန်တော်ကတော့ Leo ပါကျွန်တော်ပြောထားတဲ့အတိုင်းပဲ Espresso မှာရှိတဲ့ TDS percentage ပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒါတွေကို Refractometer နဲ့ဘယ်လိုတွက်ယူမလဲဆိုတာနဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့ filter coffee မှာရှိတဲ့ TDS တွေကို Refractometer နဲ့ဘယ်လိုတွက်ယူရမလဲဆိုတဲ့အရာလေးကိုကျွန်တော်လွန်ခဲ့တဲ့2လလောက်ကကျောင်းကိုကျွန်တော် request လုပ်ပြီးတော့ appointment ယူထားတယ်ပေါ့လေယူထားပြီးတော့ကျွန်တော်ပြီးခဲ့တဲ့စနေနေ့မှာတော့ဒီကျောင်းက appointment ပေးရပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒါနဲ့တွားပြီးတော့ကျွန်တော် trainer နေပြီးတော့တေချာရှင်းပြတယ်တေချာလည်းတွက်ပြတယ်ပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒါလေးကိုကျွန်တော် video မှတ်တမ်းလေးယူလာတယ်အဲ့ဒါကိုကျွန်တော်ဒီမှာတစ်ချက်ပြန်ပြီးတော့ translation လေးပြန်လုပ်ပေးမယ်ပေါ့လေဟုတ်ပြီအဲ့ဒါဆိုရင်ကျွန်တော်တို့ Espresso မှာရှိတဲ့ TDS percentage ကို Refractometer နဲ့ဘယ်လိုတွက်ယူမလို့ပြီးတော့ brewing ratio တွေကိုဘယ်လိုတွက်ယူမလို့ဆိုတာနဲ့ပြီးတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ extraction percentage တွေအဲ့ဒါလေးတွေကိုပါကျင်းချုံပြီးတော့ကျွန်တော်ရဲ့ trainer နေပြီးတော့တခြားလေးရှင်းပြထားပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါလေးကိုကျွန်တော် translation လေးလုပ်ပြီးတော့ရှင်းပြပါမယ်ဟုတ်ပါပြီအဲ့ဒါဆိုရင် Espresso မှာပါတဲ့ TDS ကိုဘယ်လိုတွက်ယူမလို့ဆိုတာလေးကိုစလိုက်ရအောင်
So when it comes to coffee extraction, we always have to take into account 3 variables, okay? One variable is the brewing ratio, which means how much coffee for how much water we are going to use, okay? Even if it's espresso or if it's any other extraction method, you always have a brewing ratio, okay? Once you do your beverage, you're going to have to use a device like this, which is called a refractometer. And this is meant to calculate the amount of soluble solids there is in the beverage. Okay, that's the second variable you have in your extraction. Knowing what was the brewing ratio used, knowing how much is your TDS, total dissolved solids, you can get into the extraction part. Okay? So, always the brewing ratio is something that you decide. You decide how much coffee for water you want to use. Okay? The TDS, it has to do with the grinding degree that you chose, and of course the brewing ratio will impact the amount of TDS that you have. And the extraction is just a consequence of all of that, okay? So, although the TDS of espresso is really different from filter, okay, because in espresso, as you understand, you want to have high body, and in filter is much more watery, the beverage, so you have less body. Which means that in filter you have less TDS, okay? But the extraction, no matter what kind of method you use, you always will aim to have something between 18 and 22% of extraction. Okay, what does this mean? Exactly. Let me try to put it here. So imagine that you have a coffee bean, I'm terrible in drawing, or if this is the amount of coffee we're putting to make your extraction, okay? No matter what you do, no matter how much you adjust your grinding degree or how much perfect is the brewing ratio you choose, there's only one part of the coffee you can extract from, which is something near 30%. Okay? The remaining 70% is coffee that is not extractable. But out of this 30%, some parts are soluble, so they will dissolve in water. They are the ones with the taste, and some others are insoluble and they will not dissolve. These are the ones who give you the body. Okay. So basically, what we aim in terms of TDS of the espresso, because you want to have a good body in espresso, is something between 9 and 11%. Okay.
This is for espresso.
Espresso. But for filter, if you have any other, I will just put filter. Now. TDS for filter is something between 1.15 and 1.45%.
Not too much.
Exactly. As you can understand, it's way less. Okay, but no matter what, in terms of extraction, no matter what method you choose, you always aim to have 18 to 22. So if
this
you
is
have
always the same.
Exactly. So if your coffee in the end, you thought you did everything right, but you had less than 18% of extraction, you have another extracted coffee, even if it's espresso.
Over 22 it will be over extracted.
Exactly. Over. So this will be perhaps sour. I don't know if it's still showing. And this will be bitter.
Bitter, yeah.
So we have to figure out a way of staying here. Okay?
So
how do we do this in Espresso? In Espresso, we use the Azevedo refractometer because it's really prepared for not filtering. As you can imagine, the beverage and the espresso, the liquid is very thick, so it's very hard to filter. And Azevedo is prepared to basically measure the soluble solids of the espresso without filtering. Okay, because one rule when it comes to checking TDS is that you always have to cool down the beverage to room temperature, closest to the room temperature, and you have to filter it, especially if it's a metallic filter you're using.
Okay.
So I mean this for espresso, I mean it for French press, for example, because the insoluble solids find a way to pass through the metallic filter that they don't find a way to pass in the paper filter.
Okay.
So the V60 or the Chemex, if you don't filter it, it's okay. Okay, but we always like to filter it any brewing method other than espresso. But espresso is really hard.
Yeah.
Because you have this kind of syringe, like a normal syringe, almost normal, but you can put here this filter. It has a paper inside.
There's a filter.
Yes, I know. I've seen people trying to filter it with V60 filters, any kind of paper, which is okay, but it's really hard, because it's very thick. So the Azevedo allows you to measure it without filtering, which is the good part. Okay, so for us to be able to get an espresso and measuring the TDS with the Azevedo, we need to know some things. So we need to know the brewing ratio.
Okay.
The problem with the espresso is that brewing ratio means the amount of water I'm adding on top of the coffee, right? But in espresso, you may aim for a ratio of 1 to 2, for example, or 1 to 2.5. But you're not the one adding the water on top of the coffee. It's the machine doing that.
Yes.
So you don't know exactly how much water is the machine dispensing on top of the coffee.
Okay.
So you cannot use like the calculation of a normal ratio in espresso. So what we do instead of a ratio, because a ratio is something that is presented in a form of 1 to something. Normally in espresso you have brewing ratios of 1 to 3, for example, and in filter you have 1 to 17, for example. So this means 1 gram of coffee has 3 grams of water, and 1 gram of coffee 17 grams of water. So the problem is that in espresso, how can I tell if the machine is actually dispensing 3 grams of water per each gram of coffee I put in my portafilter? I don't know. So what I do in espresso is that instead of aiming to calculate how much water we are dispensing, which is the machine, we basically will be measuring the weight of the beverage.
Okay.
So in espresso, we just want to focus on how much coffee I'm putting in my portafilter, is what we call the in, and how much beverage I'm taking into my cup, is what we call the out. Okay. And because of that, we have this graphic. Okay, let me probably put it right so you can see. You have this graphic, which you have, instead of ratios in these diagonal lines, like you would have in the other graphic that I'll show you, you have what is called EBF. Okay? So what is the EBF? Which is the synonymous for the ratio. Okay? So basically, let's try to erase it and cut this part out. So EBF has a formula, and EBF stands for Espresso Brewing Formula, exactly, which is basically your in divided by your out and multiplied by 100, so you can have so you remember, you can have the percentage, which is basically exactly the opposite of the ratio. The ratio, if you calculate it, is the out divided by in. Okay, it's exactly the and you don't multiply by anything because it's not a percentage. So basically, when I look at this graphic and I'm thinking how much coffee I'm going to use, I can see immediately that if I go to higher EBFs, and by higher I mean something higher than 55 I'm going to have a ristretto. Which is okay if I like ristretto, if I like really sour beverages, probably they will be more sour, or at least I like it with a higher body. So when you have an Espresso, you understand that the sensation, the mouthfeel sensation is much, much heavier. Okay? But when I go below something like 40, I will tend to have a lungo.
Yeah.
So it's more watery. Okay, so it depends on what you like. Let's say that I like an okay. In the okay area, I like a normal half a cup beverage, for example, and I want it to be not very intense, the body, not very weak. I just want it to be kind of balanced. Okay. So I can aim to look for example, an EBF of 50. So by thinking that maybe if I choose this EBF, maybe I'll have a nice TDS, and maybe I can stand here on the middle of the graphic. I have to understand what this means, because this EBF will tell me how much beverage I have to take into my cup.
Yes.
Okay, so imagine that I'm using, let's say, mine, either because I decided, because it's the size of my filters in the machine,
yes,
or because my boss told me that I cannot use more than that. Imagine that I'm using 17 grams as my in.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm aiming to get an EBF of 50%.
50%.
Okay?
Yes.
My EBF, I want it to be 50.
50. Yeah.
So I have to understand how much, what I need to know now that I don't know, is how much beverage I'm going to put in my cup. How much is my out? So the EBF, this is the formula, so 50%, right? Is
yes.
the EBF equals 17, which is my in,
yeah,
and my out, which I don't know what it is, multiplied by 100.
100, yeah.
So to take out this percentage here, I will divide it with this 100, and I have 0.5. Now this disappears and the percentage disappears. Multiply by equal 17 divided by out.
Yeah.
And now in mathematics, to take this variable out of here, I just switch it with this one. So my out, which is what I want to know, equals 17 divided by 0.5.
Yeah.
So whatever the result is, I don't have a calculator here, 17 divided by 0.5, 34.
34, yeah.
So I have to have my out will be equal out 34 grams. This is how much I have to extract into my cup in order to aim to have an EBF of 50.
50%, yeah.
Okay? This is how it works.
Yes.
And it works for any other EBF that I choose. Okay?
Okay. Everything, it will be the same, yeah.
Exactly.
When we do
the thing is, imagine that you do all this. You put 17 grams in your portafilter. You extract 34 grams into the cup.
Yeah.
And then you taste the coffee and you don't like it. So why do I don't like it? Do I like the body? I will measure it, of course. But if the body is okay and I measure this within the 9-11%,
yes.
I just don't like the taste. It means that I have to change something about the extraction. Okay? So because the TDS gives me the body and the extraction gives me the taste. Either sour if it's below 18, sweet if it's with 18-22, or bitter if it's above 22. Okay? Maybe now we can try to take an espresso and measure and see how it goes. This is out of 26.5 and 8.5 insides. Okay, so we have here a very nice espresso that we extract from a single portafilter, let's say like this, single dose, which we put 8.5 grams inside, and we took, for this cup, a beverage of 26.5. So if you want to calculate ratio, just to understand, it would be the out, so 26.5 divided by 8.5, which will be equal to 6.5 divided by 8.5.
8.5. 3.11.
3.11. So let's say 3.1. So I would represent this ratio like this, 1 to 3.1. Okay, this is my ratio. Okay, now I want to know what was the EBF that I used in this one. Okay, so now it's the reverse formula, let's say. So my X, the thing that I don't know, the variable that I don't know now is the EBF. Yes. This is the one that I don't know. So EBF equals in 8.5 divided by out, which I already know what it is, so I can write it, sorry. So it's 26.5 multiplied by 100, which is will equal to, do you mind? Thank you. 8.5 divided by 26.5.
8.5 divided by 26.5.
Multiplied by 100.
32.
32%. So when I look at my graphic now, and I see that I have an EBF of 32, so I am kind of on a lungo, which is, okay, this is a 70 milliliter cup. So yeah, I feel that I'm filled over it to more than the middle. So I'm more in the lungo side. Okay, yes. So the next step, so if we just look at the graphic, we think, okay, maybe I'm going to have, because it's lungo, lower TDS, which means lower body. Okay, but now let's measure it. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to put here distilled water.
Distilled water, yeah.
On here, okay, on the lens, never touching the lens. And we're going to press the 0. And it's calibrating. So it's showing me 0, 0, 0.
So distilled water is 0%
TDS, yeah. No mineralization, okay? And so I'm showing the device that this water has nothing. Yeah. So this is what the device should memorize kind of to compare now with the beverage I'm putting. Now, the first thing I need to do now before I measure the TDS is actually getting, for example, any pipette. This is a pastel pipette, and I'm going to take a little bit of this liquid and I'm going to put it in here just to cool down. Maybe I'll take a little bit more. I'll go below the crema and I just want to cool it down. So I put it in a glass that it will cool it faster. Okay. So this refractometer, it gives us always two things, as you see in there, bricks, you see the BX, and TDS. Bricks means the amount of sugar there's in the beverage. So the higher the bricks, which is the first value it's going to show, the higher the TDS will be, okay? And it also shows you the temperature. Yeah. Now it says it's room temperature, 22.3 degrees. So let's imagine that this is already cooled down. We don't have to wait long. I'm going to go again with the same pipette. It's okay because... Yes?
I got this one too. 0.
Okay, so I'm going to go down. I just squeeze the pipette and I hold it. I'm not unleashing the squeeze. And I'm going to put it here all the way to the top. And now I'm going to press. You want to show? Yeah. I'm going to press start. Just slightly pressed. And first thing is going to show me is the bricks, the amount of sugar, which unless you are registering, it doesn't show you much. Because sugar is just one part of the soluble solids of the coffee, so in the end you want to know the TDS. It's a little bit slow. It takes a little bit more time than the other refractometer.
You can see the blinking.
Yes, of the light, because it's not covered. So it's saying that it has 7.73 of sugar. Okay, and I'm going to press again the start until I see where the temperature is going to show TDS. Okay, so I leave my finger pressing. Now it switched to TDS and I take my finger out. And it says 6.31 TDS. Okay, so my TDS equals 6.31, which means it's below the ideal body that I want for espresso, okay, which would be 9 to 11.
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to measure, also to clean it, we take some tissue that is soft, we just absorb all the liquid as much as you can. And then with some pad of alcohol, 70%. These small ones are nice because you can reuse them and it doesn't dry that fast. It's just clean because they're oils from the coffee that you don't see, but they ended up disturbing the next measurements, because if it becomes kind of yellowish there, it may affect the way the light is refracted. Because the refractometer, as you saw it blinking, is sending some light with a certain wavelength into the beverage and is measuring the reflected light. So the more dark and less transparent is the beverage, the more TDS you're going to have.
Yes.
So this is how it measures, okay? So 6.31 is what I got. I know already I'm on this lower part here. Yes. Like my coffee will be perhaps weak. But is it well extracted or is also under extracted? Okay. Which, we've tasted it, right? I liked it.
I like it too, yeah.
But yeah, maybe it's too mild. Maybe it should be stronger. So now the formula of the extraction. do you think it shows here still? You can see it?
Yeah.
The formula of the extraction is basically the TDS multiplied by the out and divided by the in, which means my extraction, it's going to be something like 6.31 multiplied by 26 and a half and divided by 8.5.
6.20, no,
6.31 multiplied by 26 and a half divided 8.5.
19.
Okay, so this is amazing. That's why I liked it. So this means that the coffee is perfectly extracted because it's within the 1822. It just has a lower body.
Yeah.
So for a person like me that I'm more fond of filter, so I don't care much about the body, that's why I like this espresso, because it's well extracted and it's not very intense, the body, which is something that I dislike a little bit. That's why I prefer filter.
So am I. Yeah, that is fine.
Okay.
So we have 90.6. See, goes in the between the doing my one. Seshika in a sentence it doesn't, like an reality. I go, yada, Sako, that my child, I dream my shot.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So it means that now you might ask me, so Sandra, how can I increase my TDS? Well, in this case, because people that are watching us don't know, but we prepared this espresso from a capsule with specialty coffee. But if it was a normal espresso extracted from industrial machine, we would just have to work a little bit with the grinding degree. Maybe put a little bit finer. And by putting it finer, it allows the water to go more inside the particles and then extract more. That will be the way to increase a little bit our TDS. But I mean, okay, if you can, in the end depends on what you like, what the market, if you're selling the coffee, wants, or your clients in your coffee shop wants. Do they value more the body and they don't care much about the extraction? I think it's a nice coffee, although we have a lower body.
It is quite nice. I really enjoy this coffee too, but if we don't mind the calculation, but
exactly.
I really
and normally in the coffee shops, people just ended up tasting it, right? Even the baristas, they just taste. They are not actually measuring all the beverages to check if the TDS is the right one or even the extraction. So in the end, if it tastes good, but now you know how to calculate it properly.
Now we know how to calculate.
Exactly.
Thank you. This is for the espresso part.
Exactly.